Welcome YouTube friends. Today I've got a tutorial to show you how to make these great framed blocks. They're a very easy block to make. We're going to make several different sizes of them, all the way down to these itty bitty cuties. And then at the end of the tutorial, we'll also learn how to make these darling little 4-patch blocks, and we're going to strip piece them so they're a little bit easier to put together. I'll have I don't know what you call it, kind of bookmarks. If you slide along the bar of the timeline, that'll show you what's going on at each part, so you can skip ahead if you need to find a step that works for you. We're going to talk about the cutting, the sewing, how to set up your machine for the sewing. We're going to troubleshoot. I had all kinds of trouble getting my machine set up right, and so I'm just going to walk you through it. Oh, hey, this happens. This is what you do. I want to be very real with my followers and subscribers with what happens in my sewing. Hey, I didn't know how to do this. This was what the fix I finally found for it. I think that's helpful for me as I'm learning to sew and to make things, and I think it'll be helpful for you as well. What else are we going to do? Oh, we're going to talk about how to press it. There's a certain way that you can press these just to make sure things go nicely, they play nicely in your quilt. And then trimming at the end. That'll be the parts of this video. We are doing a block of the month for the Boho heart. This is from Jen Kingwell and Andrea Baer. And these blocks, even though they would go great in any quilt, are specifically for month one, as we're doing our block of the month in the Jen Kingwell. And we started here with these blocks because they're super easy to put together, super fun. You can fussy cut something in the center to give yourself a great design. A fun way to get started on this project and on this quilt. If you need more information on the block of the month, that'll be down below in the description. The links where you can sign up, the links where you can find the schedule. It's free. It's totally free. We just want you guys to be able to join us on this sew along, just for the love of being creative, for learning how to sew. Glad you're here. Hey friends, how are you? It's evening here. I've got everything wrapped up at my house, and now I'm getting started on a little sewing. It's kind of nice to find some time for yourself at the end of the day, just to do something that maybe takes yourself off the day's worries, takes your mind off the day's worries. And so this is what I'm doing tonight, is I am getting ready to start. This is like my first cut. This feels kind of like a momentous occasion on the Boho heart quilt. And we're gonna start with this block of the month plan with doing easy blocks first. So we're starting out with 2 of the simplest tonight. They're going to be a checkerboard block and then a framed block, which is just a square of fabric with a little border all the way around it. So I'm gonna show you my cutting process for that, and then we'll show you what the finished blocks look like. This is a really simple block. I want to show you a couple of, little housekeeping things. This is the pattern that you need to get, the Boho Heart booklet. It's going to have all of these directions. As I cut these for you, to be respectful of the pattern makers, which is Jen Kingwell and Andrea Baer. I'm not positive how you say her last name, B-A-I-R. I won't be telling you measurements just because that is in the pattern. That is their proprietary information. But I do want to show you enough to give you tips and tricks on how to do these things yourself when you get there. So in case you've got questions, you know where we're headed. A couple of things I noticed as I pulled out my big pattern box. I've been saving all of my fabrics that I thought I might like to use. I went through them. I culled any that I didn't think worked with my color palette. Got them all together, so this was the first time I got to pull out a few. I've ironed them all, draped them over my chair there so I can pull them off in pairs. And what I did was I went through and I found 2 that I thought might work together. Maybe they were colors that seemed harmonious together, or maybe they were something that was a really striking border to something. Since we're doing these framed, you want your frame to have a little bit of difference with what you're making. Okay, a couple of fabric notes. This fabric has some like sunlight damage. Its folds, where it was folded up into its fat quarter, are a little bit pale. So I'm gonna have to avoid those. The first block that we're cutting, the largest square piece, was big enough for me to fussy cut. So I kind of moved my ruler all around to find what I wanted to do. Found a rose that I liked. I'm gonna fussy cut around that and let that be the center of that square. And then the piece that's gonna go around it is this sleeve from a men's dress shirt that I got at a thrift store. And something that you'll need to note is if you use a directional fabric like a stripe for the border around a block, you're gonna need to notice which direction you're going. So I'm gonna have to cut one strip going one way, another going the other, so that when they're laid out around my block, they all look uniform. I have a couple of sizes of rulers, a small one just in case that helps me with the small pieces I'm cutting. And then I've got some clips so that I can hold my pieces together at the end. Okay, are you ready? Here we go. I do want to tell you, I know that the way that I cut, I've been told, is kind of backwards. I cut, even though I'm right-handed, I cut from left to right. I've been told that I measure it the way someone would measure if they were like cutting wood, as opposed to the way, no, I measure from right to left. And most quilters, I think, sewists would start at the one mark and like measure this way. I don't know why I do it that way. It's just what seemed natural to me and I did it. Okay, first one. That'll be so cute in the center of a block. Now, what else am I gonna do? Okay, so for purposes of making this video, I'm just gonna cut tonight the things that I'm actually going to use for tonight, the sizes I know I need. An unusual thing about this pattern is that it is such a big sampler that there's so many different blocks that it would be hard to cut everything and know what went together, because maybe you want this little Dresden plate to look good together, but that looks drastically different than how you would do a star. So I really think it's going to help you if you only cut 1 month's blocks at a time, just the blocks that you're thinking about, even though it's tempting once you've kind of got them all laid out. I did press these a little bit, sometimes just a corner of the fabric. I starched the sleeve just because I did it first, and then I decided that was kind of ridiculous. I can starch the block once I get it made, and so I think I'll prefer to do it that way. All right, so now I need to get my book back open. For the block of the month, there are 3 different sizes of simple framed squares and a total of 7 of those framed blocks that you're going to be making. So I'm just going to be looking at my notes, cutting along. I'll turn on some music for you guys if you care to watch. If you don't care to watch me cut, you can skip along the, I don't even know what we call this, the bar. I'll make notes of where the next part of the video is, where I start to sew the pieces together. For the mini framed squares, I need 2 of them, and so I'm going to stack up my 2 colors that I want to be centers, and then I like to save my selvages, so I'm going to start by cutting off my selvage edges. Save those for a selvage project. And here's my borders for the mini square. Again, I'm cutting 2 fabrics at a time because there are 2 of these little mini blocks.
starting by just, I don't know, would squaring off be the right word? Neatening the edge of my strip. And I'm going to neaten this edge as well. It's catching on my other ruler down here. It's like, what's happening? Why am I being... As you line up your fabric, you do want to make sure that you've not jostled the fabric out of place as you've moved around. And so again, I'm making some narrow strips here, and I'll be cutting different lengths out of them for the strips that frame these blocks. Something fun that you can do with framed blocks of any size is they work nicely in a patchwork quilt beside a block that is just a cube of fabric. Just a plain patchwork block, a plain block of fabric. And then you can frame a block beside it, and it just elevates the quilt a little bit. I did a Tim Holtz quilt that it just felt, I don't know, it was a great pattern. It was a 4 square, a framed block, and then a regular block of fabric all together. And that was just, I don't know, it was a really winning combination here. All right, I've done a better job of figuring out the size of my square in this corner, since I tend to cut from this direction. If you cut from the other direction, yours will probably go the other way. And then I am comfortable rotating my cutter from hand to hand. You want to do that carefully. I've got 3 fabrics stacked up this time, because for this size I need 3. That gives me my 3 squares. Just did a better job. I thought you should see me do a better job at that. Okay, let me put these little blocks together for you. Need a little space here. You'll notice that your shorter blocks are always the same width as your actual block. So I decided I like the green with that little green flower. And I picked the green flower because I feel like Jen Kingwell likes mid-century modern stuff a little bit, and that felt a little more that era to me. But these were a nice strong color contrast. And then Jen Kingwell uses lots of black and white in her quilts, and I love the look at it, but I always get scared of like putting it in. Once I actually have a quilt going that I think I want to put it in, I get scared of the way it's going to look. And so what I did when I was cutting today was I just made sure that I included a couple of the black and whites. I wanted, I don't know, almost every block, maybe except for this one has a little bit of pink in it because I want pink to be a central color. But there's some good variety there. So now what I'll do is grab my clips. And by the way, this is a little metal bowl that you get at Harbor Freight. It's magnetized. Some of them will stick, not the kind of the top layer, but the bottom layer will stick in there. Just a nice place to pull up your stuff. So what I'll do now that all this is cut is I'll go to my sewing machine and I will chain piece these all together, and I'll let you guys see all that. Right now I'm just stacking them up just to keep them together so I remember what fabrics I wanted to go together. This is also a nice way to do it if, like me, you're gonna cut for a little while and then go to bed and then come back and sew another time. very satisfactorily. I warned you at the beginning of this that we were not going to need large scale prints. This really may be as large of a single flower that as I get to put in the whole quilt. I really don't know that there's much larger than that going in. So you can see how small prints are going to work better for you. Okay. So here are my scrappy leftovers in that width. These would be the right width for doing your checkerboard. Is that no? 4-patch, sorry. Checkerboards are gonna happen next month. So you could save these, they could be useful next month in checkerboards as well. But for the 4-patch for today, I wanna show you the technique that we're gonna use. And it's just simply that we're cutting 2 strips and then we're gonna just cut them apart into our squares. All right, all of my framed blocks are cut, and now I've cut the strips that I'm going to use to make the 4-patch. This is a 4-patch. Let me show you where they're going to be in the quilt. So there's one here and one there. Now you can see in the scheme of things, those are really hard to identify. Mine are going to match, but the thing about this quilt is if I get them there and I decide I don't like the matchiness of it, there are other blocks that size, and so I could just swap them out with something else that was the same size. The pattern is laid out so that you've got, well, let me just show you if you haven't already looked at it. The pattern is laid out so that you can put the blocks in the spaces where they can go by size. All right, so the way that this is going to work is I'm going to sew these 2 strips together, and then I'm going to cut them in the size that I need to make the square blocks out of them for the 4-patch, the 2 colors side by side. Then once I get that strip cut, I'll just flip one around, sew those together, and boom, I'll have a 4-patch without having to piece every single individual square. Well, last night I got all of my pieces cut out and I laid them out beside my machine. This morning I was so ready to get in here and sew. It is already nighttime the following day from when I cut my pieces. And I have had workers here all day. Our internet has been out, and thank goodness they were here and working to solve all of the problems. But they were here from mid-morning until after dark. Like, it was an amazing work day for them. We're so grateful they were here. But where the internet is right behind my sewing machine in a closet. I really couldn't get in here and sit and sew. And if they weren't in my house, they were stomping around in the attic. And so you could have heard it in my videos. That would have been a really weird sound. Anyway, so here we go. We're getting our machine set up. So I wanted to show you what's happening right here. So I've taken my plate off because I had this plate on. If you'll notice this longer hole here as compared to the single hole here. I had this plate on in case I wanted to zigzag something if my needle needed to move from side to side. That's the space for the needle to do that. But for now, I don't want it to. I want to have just the single hole with these little small itty bitty pieces. That's going to keep from getting a tip of them sucked down into that space. With larger pieces, it might not matter as much. And sometimes I just like keeping the one with the wider opening on just in case I forget and turn it to zigzag, because what happens then is when your needle hits that metal plate, if it strikes it, it will break your needle. And then you'll be going, what? Why did that happen? Oh, yeah. All right, so this is the little brush that came with my machine. The way it works is kind of interesting. It just kind of works to get all the little bits together. Then I can turn them off. So you saw me kind of set up to cut at my dining table, but honestly, if you had a big enough sewing space where you could cut beside your machine and then have an ironing station to the other side of you, that's going to make this process go a little bit simpler. Now, I know it's not ideal and we can't all be set up that way, but all right. For the record, you don't ever want to use compressed air, even though it seems like it would be a good idea to blow out those fuzzies in your machine, but you don't ever want to do that because, let's see, that compressed air can blow the fuzz back up into into this space of your machine, and you don't want that. I don't like what's happening with where my scissors. I keep scissors down here. I don't like where this is going to end. For patchwork piecing, often we quilters want to just use some kind of a neutral colored thread. There was already pink thread in my machine from another project. And so that works for me. My Valentine heart is very pink. That will be just fine. Gray is another great neutral color, a light or a dark or medium. Just work it to whatever your thing is. Bernina has a patchwork foot that is called, it's 57D on newer machines. And here we go. Here's what's unique about that. It's got a little bar that works as a little bumper to keep your alignment at 1/4 inch. That's where you want to be at. So the alignment is from your needle to 1/4 inch. That's where we're sewing all of our seams at. If you don't have something like that, your machine might come with, a little bumper. And then you install that right here. You put a screw here, install it here, and that keeps the fabric from going too far. Whatever your setup is, many quilters will tell you they like to use a scant 1/4 inch. And my feeling is that scant 1/4 inches happen because quilters sometimes, if they're trying to be really precise about their piecing, they like to starch and then press their blocks once they're done. And then if they need to, if things have shifted a little bit, if things are a little bit out of alignment, if they need to, at that point, then what they can do is trim it. Makes it really nice. Okay, lotions are on, the machine's cleaned. All right, let me show you what we've got going on here. For my stitch length for patchwork, I want it to be a little bit shorter of a stitch. All right, I think 225 will be good there. And I have changed my foot without setting it on my machine. So I just have to scroll over and find that number on my foot. And what number was it? 57D. There we go. On my really old Bernina, I have an 830 record, so it's from the early 80s. The way that I set that one up for patchwork is that the foot on it is not exactly 1/4 inch foot, but if I will move my needle over like one little click, then from the needle a little bit to the side to the edge of the foot works out as 1/2 inch. All right, some other alignment tips and tricks. You can see that I've got tape here on my machine, and when I slid my little tray back, it's not lined up anymore. I'll put a link to some of this tape and some of the other products that you might see me using into the comments. All right, I'm gonna turn my wheel toward me so that I can pick up that thread, make sure everything's good there. Nope, I didn't get it. I may have cut it too short when I tried to keep it from interfering with the plate. We have to go back in underneath and get it. Let's try it one more time. Nope, not getting it. Okay, I'm gonna have to work on that. Okay, finally got that bottom thread back up. Here's where we're gonna start at. For these sets of framed squares, we're gonna start with
putting the short side on, and unless your fabric is somehow dimensional, like if that was a stripe, doesn't matter where you're going, you're going to begin with the 2 shortest sides. Now, if you don't trust your machine, your foot, not to maybe pull on it, just slide a little pin in just to help give you some extra stability. Oh, here's my other tip before I forget. This is a large piece, so I'm not worried about it. If I were starting with a small piece, I would be more concerned about this. But sometimes it just helps you. If what you run through your machine the first time is a nice wide piece, wider than those feed dogs, helps you get started. So this is my little leaders and enders project I've got going. Oh, hang on. Can't find. Where's my pedal? There we go. All right. So this is my leaders and enders project. And it's a patchwork quilt that is colored fabrics opposite white fabrics. And so what I'll do is I'll sew one at the beginning, one at the end. And when I first saw this idea, it was labeled as the quilt that sews itself because it works as leaders and enders. And then eventually you've got your pieces start coming together and you've got a quilt ready to roll. All right. Oops, you can see I got away from that little guided edge. Is it? Why is it pulling? Okay, so with my needle down, I'm going to lift my foot up, release some of this tension, see what's happening, why I'm not like lining up there. Okay, I think I'm better than I think I am. Okay. Let me sew a neck square, and then I'll pull that one off and look at it. I think that one turned out a little bit crazy. All right, so right here, here's my tape. This is my 1/4 inch, and I'm working to align this edge of the fabric so that I can see that black line. Let me snip off that back one. Yep. Okay. So can you see that? I did. I started veering off. So probably what I need to do is, oh, I don't even know if that looks really good from like here on over. This is what happens when I'm trying to film and do stuff. Okay, so also what lives close right here with my machine is my seam ripper. So if something isn't straight, it's never going to get better. It's never going to get fixed. You really do need to rip it out and try again. With having so many blocks in such an interesting, I don't know what you call this configuration, where they're not in straight rows. Jumbled is the word that comes to mind, but that's really not it. Maybe scattered is the word. Anyway, so with sort of the jigsaw placement of these blocks, we are going to want to make sure that our measurements are correct. Now, one of the fun things about moving your stitch length down is that it just makes it that much harder to pick out. All right, I'm going to work on picking that out later. Let's go ahead and sew a little bit so you can see some sewing. Again, starting with the short side. If you don't feel comfortable that it might not move on you, the fabrics might not slide apart from each other, stick a little pin in there. And so what I'm doing is chain piecing. Oop, that pin got a little close. And it just means that I don't have to stop and start. Okay, I'm not liking how that is fitting on my machine.
sideways too. Okay, I'm going to work on this. Beside my machine, I have a little sewing station set up. And so what we're looking to have happening is we want all of these seam allowances to be going to the outsides of the block. So that means it's going to push open that way. So just a little hit with an iron. There's no steam on my iron, just makes it go really fast. And then I can come back, sew on the other side. That's how you're going to proceed around with these little blocks. So a couple of my fabrics here are shirt fabrics, and they're a little bit woven, and I have to look really hard to tell which side is which. Sometimes it just takes looking at both. There we go. There's the right sides together. I've got my knee lift on my machine, so with my right knee, I can just raise and lower the foot. I'm not pushing it up, touching the needle, but close to it, going in. Aligning short sides to short sides. Seams press away when you get ready to press. All right, something that you'll see people who quilt say to do is to set your seam. I think that this is a holdover from people who are used to garment making, but I do also like it. And the idea is that it kind of helps to uniform that seam, make it a little better when you press it. All right, so when I first started sewing, I was really having quite a few stitches veer to the side like this. And so what I've figured out to do is that's less than my 1/4 inch seam allowance. So what I'm going to do is just run it back through again. Maybe I've like flipped it over a different direction this time. Working it a little bit better. And I think what I have to do for me is I have to kind of hold at both sides so that my machine doesn't pull. I also lightened up the pressure. If you have the ability to change the pressure setting on your foot, you can do that. And so several of these I've run over again, and now I'm ready to press them open. There's one that I pressed again. You see that? So you can see where my stitches differ at that point.
All right, now I'll just slide over here, do the thing where I set the seam. That was the back side, so I just need to press that front side open. Now you can see that's going to be a fun little block. I wanted to show you that if you needed to pin some of these little teeny tiny ones, that you really just wouldn't have much length at all to sew before you were running into a pin. If you pinned it right this direction, you can pin it over here to the side and it'll still work, and you can actually keep it there the whole length of your stitching. All right, so I've got a whole little stash of these darling little blocks done. Look how precious these are. But I wanted to remind you, so I showed you the first two sides are moving out. The first two seams are pressed out toward the outside of the blocks, and then the long sides will be pressed out as well. So I've already pressed this side. I've just sewn here. So again, I'm going to set that seam, just ironing it, and you can see what happens is it went from puckered just to a little straighter and flatter. And so the theory is that when you open it up, then it opens up a little more nicely once you're pressing it. And so then I wanted to show you what happened over here. When I looked here at this one, I got these flipped when I was sewing them. And so if this was your, I don't know, quilt that's fabulous and you want it to be perfect, this wouldn't be what you would do, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm not cutting any seams. I'm just releasing those threads a little bit so that those two pieces cannot be puckered anymore, so that they can lay down flat. So I'll just iron that again. So I've heard a quilter saying of someone whose family member, maybe your mother, said, well, it's not going to hang at Paducah, meaning the quilt show in Paducah. So if you are trying to get your quilt into Paducah, then, well, I don't know, fix your seam. Be more careful than me. All right, so here's where you go. Seams are all ironed outward. You'll iron the short two and then the long two. And there we go. So much fun. Okay, next, we need to sew together our strips. All right, so I've pinned together two strips that are pinned right sides together. This is what I'm going to make my little checkerboards with. It's about 22 inches long. And I'm just going to sew the length of this, press it open. It's not really going to matter which direction you're pressing. Okay, this is the magic of my new machine. Oh, yay. I get to change my bobbin now. All right, so I've stitched together my little strip. Just flipping it just so I can get it on the same spot here. And then again, you'll need to open it up, press it to one side. That would be the dark side. So for me, that's actually going to be pink, not typically a dark side color that you would think of. But what happens is that way that whatever color you've got showing doesn't come through the color. That's why you press to the dark side. All right, do make sure that you don't have like any weird folds or gaps right here. You are pressing that all the way open. I did a quilt last year where I was working in the RV and I ironed some strips with some little creases in them. And they were so terrible. And I'd cut the strips down into other pieces. And I finally had to go in. It was throwing my measurements all off. I finally had to go in, undo all the pieces that I'd cut, and then re-sew them. It was an enormous pain. Okay, so this is the unit. I'm going to strip cut into little increments, and then that will become the pieces for my checkerboard blocks. still going to stay in my wearable camera. So now we're going to subcut this strip into little 2-piece units for our 4 patches. We need 5 of these 4-patch blocks. Shifting to a different ruler than I was using earlier today. I'm having to readjust to what these markings are like. And again, I've told you that I've been told I measure in an odd way. You do you. You do what works for you. All right, so what's gonna happen is we'll flip those around, sew here, and then that becomes our darling little patch block. Oh, so cute. I'm so happy with that. And then I'll keep cutting the rest of my little patches. I am just so excited about these cutie little pieces. I love the way the black and white and the pink polka dot turned out. I want to show you how these are going to work when you start to pin them together so that you can stitch them. Oops, get that in the view counter. All right, so you've got your seam going this direction one way, this direction the other way, and the idea of nesting those seams, get that really close, is when you start to fold them flat, can you see how they're going to be close in together? The 2 edges of those seams are just kind of kissing in the middle there. That's what we want. We want them lined up also along this edge. So it's too hard to do in the air. All right, so I'm going to turn it so that the seam that is going downward, like I'm going to start stitching here and move this direction so that the piece that's on the bottom, the seam that's going downward, won't get flipped up. That's the goal. So this seam will be pointing toward me, and then I can watch it and so that see that it's not getting caught and flipped. All right. Okay, adjust my camera just a tad. Okay, our last step is spritz these with a little bit of starch. I've already pressed the seams the way that I want them. Now I'm just going to starch them so that they stay stiff. And the reason is, eventually, when we pull them out of their little maybe Ziploc bag that we've stored them in, I think it's month 10 of this Block of the Month series that we're going to be laying out our heart. We'll finally have all the blocks done. These are just going to be easier to work with if they've got a little body, a little stiffness to them if they've been starched. Oh, that's very nice. This one was just very wrinkly before I starched it. So lovely. And then as a last step, if you would like, you can get out rulers that are maybe you have square rulers or you just want to check the borders and stuff. Like this one looks a little crooked. That would be one I could even up now that I have pressed it and starched it. These are just so stinking cute. The way that I'll be storing these is I'll have a Ziploc bag that says whatever size in inches my blocks are, because at the end of your quilt, when we start to lay out that heart, there's going to be a spot that says, oh, a 4-inch block goes here, a 2-inch block goes here. And then you can, intermingle them however much you want. Just as a side note, my approximately 22-inch strip did give me actually 2 extra little blocks. So you don't have to make it quite that long. You could be a little more conservative in your fabric use. But since I like these so much, I can really see actually sticking them in somewhere. So there we go. You guys did it. We have sewn the blocks, all of the framed blocks. There are, I think, 7 of those. And then our 5 4-patch blocks. You did it. All right. If you've done this, feel free to go to Happy Quilty People Sewing Bee group. There you'll be able to post pictures of what you've got going on. Thanks for sharing your time with me today, guys. I appreciate it so very much. See you on month 2.